of all, thank you for taking the time to speak with the Seancast today. I really appreciate your time and making yourself available for this interview.
No, thank you so much for inviting me. What a privilege. So you've done amazing work. It's been fun to watch.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the vote of confidence. To not waste much of your time, I want to say congratulations for being named the USTF Track and Field Cross Country Coaches Association Assistant Coach of the Year and the South Region as the Assistant Coach of the Year. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah, look, my guys make me look really good, right? The young people I coach, men and women, they do an amazing job. They work really hard. So it's all credit to them.
That is awesome. To not waste my time, I want to ask you, what has contributed to your overall success this season? What would you say are some of the factors that contributed to your success this season?
Yeah, look, I think just a fantastic group of young people that are very focused, right? We have a strength coach, Tyler Gay, who's, in my opinion, the best in the country. Camille Moles is our academic advisor. She's amazing, right? Keeping everybody on course. Angelina Harada is our trainer, and she does a fantastic job of keeping everybody healthy, right? So you get a chance to really push your athletes because all those pieces are in place. But it also takes a group of young people who are willing to sacrifice some things for the greater good and for what's coming down the road. And, it's hard to sit there in August and say, I'm willing to get up at 5 a.m. to go lift weights every day because I might run fast in June, right?
Yeah.
But they did it, man. It's such a fun group to be around, and so it's a lot of fun. Maya McCoy is a sprinter that's on the circuit a lot at the moment. She trains with the group, and and all of that benefits each other. So it's definitely a village to raise a young person.
That is awesome. I know you're a coach with a lot of accolades, and you've coached a lot of top elite sprinters and elite athletes in the past. But moving on from that, as a former college athlete, Zimbabwean national record holder in the 400-meter hurdles, and competing at the college level and as well as the international level, how did it all start with you with coaching after your career?
Yeah, I think I was sort of thrust into it, right? When I turned professional my junior year and I moved to Florida to train there, Terry Long was the coach at Florida State, and he gave me an opportunity to not just be coach, but to learn what we were doing and why we were doing it. And I think that was a fantastic way to sort of get me involved. So I volunteer coached for 7 years. And then, I ruptured my Achilles, so my career ended sort of overnight. And I was lucky enough to get a job at Florida State and be in the right place. I was coaching some of the guys already. And just right place, right time. And then the opportunity to coach super high level athletes that wanted to achieve at the highest level, right? So college was a stepping stone for them. I think you oftentimes get to coach young people that college is their final destination in terms of sports. And I feel like I've surrounded myself with young people that wanted to go beyond that. So very blessed in that regard.
That is awesome. And thank you for sharing that experience with us. Moving on from that, what would you say are some of your challenges during your early days or your early career days as a coach? What are some of the challenges that you faced?
Yeah, I think learning how to coach different people in the same event, I think was probably the hardest thing, right? In your mind, when you start coaching, you're like, well, I have a plan for 400 hurdles. That's what I did. And this is how I'm going to coach everybody, and they're all going to be the same, right? And then you start to realize that everybody's got strengths and weaknesses and they're different. And so adjusting for those things, Walter Dix was third in Beijing in the 200 and Brian Zingai was fourth. And I would assume that they trained the same, maybe 60% of the time, right? And they end up in the final next to each other, and they're pretty close, and they didn't train exactly the same. And I think a lot of people find that surprising. But so I think that was one of the things. I learned early on that if they ran well, that was because they were really good. And if they ran poorly, that was my fault. And I like to take that on myself. I want athletes to have confidence. I want to prepare them the right way. And then maybe the biggest lesson was that for me, the regular season doesn't matter. I want my athletes to peak when it counts. And so maybe holding back on some things early and not wanting to see, them on that teeter's list at the top, like it doesn't really matter until it really counts. So, so I think, you learn as you go and you learn how to deal with different personalities, both people you coach, but also the people you work with. And then obviously it's got to be fun, right? So you have to learn that it's not the be all and end all, and that the athletes want to have fun too.
That is awesome. Is it very tempting when it comes to like the rankings? Does he help? Does he force you to change like the program or any way, or it just sticks to the program?
Yeah, I'm very lucky. Coach Burrell doesn't force me or push me to be ranked high early and to have guys run and things like that. He's very, we had 5 guys at the Olympics last summer that obviously started late, and then Jacoby was at U20s, so he started late. Israel was at U20s. So he was very understanding and very supportive in that we didn't need to run fast early, that we would run fast when it counted. So I think you earn that right from your head coach, right? You sort of you get to that point where they trust you, and I think I've been very lucky in the 4 schools that I've worked at to have coaches that understood that part of it. So yeah.
That is awesome, and it'll be unfair for any coach not to trust you because you have the track record of picking your athletes at the right time. One of the questions that was asked on the Instagram, one of the co-coach ID Dean was asked me to ask you that was driving the bus. How many hours did it take for you to learn how to drive the big bus? I don't know what that means, but only you.
Well, there's a long story, right? So when I was a volunteer coach, we had a staff meeting and we had the ACC championships in Virginia, and it was a long drive and we had flights, and we felt like if we took some more athletes, we could win the meet. And Coach Long, the head coach at the time, said that we didn't have enough tickets. So I volunteered to drive a van with trainers and people 11 hours, and we ended up winning the meet. So I've always told people that I'm just a bus driver, right? I like to get my athletes to the track on time, and then we get to work. So that's his reference there. But yes, many hours. Although he's a heck of a bus driver himself, so he's done a great job this year, and he always has in his career. So in fact, if you go back, he owes me some money because his athlete at North Carolina broke my school record in the 400 hurdle. So he owes me lunch for that one.
Okay, Coach ID Dean, if you are listening to this, you owe Coach Ken his lunch, so make sure you give him his lunch.
Exactly.
Moving on from that, Coach, how would you describe your coaching philosophy for anyone who is out there who is looking or who is in the process of deciding to join your program, or if you are in the process of speaking to other athletes? How would you describe your coaching philosophy to those athletes or those people?
Yeah, look, I think the philosophy in general is not just coaching, right? It's mentoring and it's parenting and all the others is to prepare our student athletes for the next step, whether that's as an employee, as a spouse, or as a parent, or as a professional athlete, whatever it is, right? And getting them ready for something bigger than just track and field. So we spend a lot of time talking about investing in real estate, or saving your money, or how do we prepare, right? Or what are we looking for in a potential life partner? What how are we going to teach our children to have great values and things like that? So our practices are quite often begin with a question from me. So a couple of weeks ago, I asked, what's the most important question in the world? And there were a bunch of different answers. And I said, well, for me, I think the most important question is, what's in it for me? I think that drives a lot of people. And then I said, you will come across a very small amount of people in your life that don't care what's in it for them, and they will pour into you. And those are people you want to keep close to you and make sure they stay in your life. So yeah, I think it's all about the next step and what's coming, and great preparation. In terms of the coaching itself, I think we're very intentional about what we're trying to accomplish on a day-to-day basis, and it's part of an overall plan. And I think we're intentional about those things. So and mostly being prepared for for the time that counts the most, right? So our preparation is for the NCAA championships, for the Olympic Games, for the World Championships. Those are our meets.
That is awesome, and that is refreshing to hear. When it comes to recruiting athletes, I know coaches look at stats and all that, but beyond the stats, what are other qualities that you look out for in athletes?
Yeah, look, I'm trying to get to know young people, right? Some of it is a recommendation from somebody else. You know, Israel is here because of Ajay. Ajay is here because of Favor, right? Maka is here because my mom taught his uncle in third grade in 1994.
Oh, wow, that's crazy.
You know, Dario's here because of Maka. So there's all these connections, and I truly believe in bringing the right people to be part of the team. So it's not just the numbers, it's more than that. I like to be very honest with the athletes I coach. I'm intense. My standards are very high. My expectations are high. So I think as you get to know the young people and you're honest with them, then you figure out if they fit the vibe of the group or not. And the vibe of the group is very, very important to me. So look, I went to boarding school when I was 11, 12, right? I grew up in that kind of society in Zimbabwe. So, you know, we're hardworking people. So that's number one thing, you know. So
that is awesome, and that is refreshing to hear, because I know a lot of people, a lot of coaches or their upcoming coaches, they look too much into stats and forget about other factors that is going to help the team spirit and all.
Yes.
That is very refreshing to hear. Moving on from that, I know you're a former Zimbabwe national athlete, and I don't know the history between you and the Zimbabwe National Federation. And I believe that you are a great national treasure to Zimbabwe right now. And I believe they are not utilizing you, but as the Federation reached out in any way to utilize your expertise to help them continue on growing and keep winning international medals, like with this crop of athletes?
Yeah, we've had some talks. You know, Brian Zingai ran for me at Florida State, and you know, and he's sort of a go-between in terms of the federation and the athletes. And you know, we've had some talks and things like that. I don't know how serious they are about the movement of athletes from college to professional ranks and medals and things like that. I think they're happy for them to just sort of do it on their own. They always have been. So from my perspective, I'm trying to prepare my student athletes and my Zimbabwean athletes for that level of greatness without any assistance from the federation. You know, I told the federation many years ago that I thought that their resources should be put into preparing high school athletes to go to college in America and utilize the system and prepare them, and then come back 4 or 5 years later and pick them back up and continue that process. But, you know, that 18 to 22 is such an important era in your, you know, part of your career, and you get to do it for free over here. So, but look, there's also a great part of our federation is allowing other people to learn and be part of it and come to world championships and be the coach and be part of that. And I find my way in and do my thing. So Brian Zingai and I find ways to bring young athletes to the States and present opportunities. And we raise funds from businesses and things like that to pay for flights and SATs and those kinds of, you know, expenses that they can't afford. So we feel like we do our part, and you know, if the federation wants to utilize me, I'm here.
Yeah, because I've spoke with a couple of guys, and the last time I spoke with Coach Monya, he looks up to you as well, and he was saying the same thing, that one of the strategy that was changed by the federation from the 2023 World Championship was to bring the individual coaches of the athletes, and that made a lot of difference for Maka and Charlie to get to the Olympic final. So, and there was also a talk about the Zimbabwe 4x1 team that, like the current crop of athletes, to be able to get a really good 4x1 team. What's your overall take about that?
Yeah, look, I'd love to see us put together a 4x1, right? You know, it does require money, right? And we don't come from a rich country, so But I do think there's a way, and Brian Zingai and I have worked on that kind of plan for 2028 in preparation for that. So yeah, we're getting there.
That sounds awesome. And for any international student athlete, international student athletes are always coming into the United States. And right now, the NCAA have passed like the roster limits for the track teams and the teams right now. What impact do you think this regulation is going to have on international student athletes coming into the country or joining programs, NCAA programs?
Yeah, look, I actually think the roster limits are a good thing. I truly believe that if our sport wants to continue to be successful in the NCAA, we have to find a way to have a true team scoring situation, right? Where, maybe we have 20 men on the roster and, we do dual meets or double dual meets so that we can have win-loss records and things like that. So I also feel like that it pushes more talent down to smaller schools and smaller conferences and things like that. So I think it will affect the bottom level athletes, but the high level, very talented international athlete, I don't think it affects them at all. Now, maybe they don't get to come to Auburn. Maybe they have to go to a school that's a little bit further down the ranking system, but there's nothing wrong with that. There's so much good coaching in the NCAA right now, and there's so many good opportunities. And the reality is, if you're on a full scholarship here or you're on a full scholarship at Southern Miss, you can be successful, right? And find a way to do what the coach asks you to do. Go to class, get your degree, do all those things. And I think you've got a bevy of opportunities in front of you.
Yeah, I really like that you re-emphasize my idea or what I've been thinking about, because I believe coming from Africa, you don't get this kind of facilities in Africa. So I believe that any international student who comes here, regardless of the school you find yourself, make the best out of that situation. So I'm very glad that you also have the same idea or belief in that as well. So with the same team, do you think this can further move on to become part of the international athletics or what athletics circuit, as track being like a team sport instead of like making it individual?
I don't think it needs to be at the next level. I think in college it does. I think in the NCAA system, your fan base is they're bought into, did we win this weekend, right? We come back from a track meet in Gainesville or, Florida relays, and the people you talk to are like, well, did you win? Well, no, we qualified some people ran fast, but there were no winners and no losers. And then you sort of lose interest that way, right? And so I think within the NCAA system, we have to find a way to be more of a team-oriented scoring system year-round versus just at the NCAA meet. And it's difficult because what happens is you leave out a bunch of teams when you go to the postseason, like the NCAA basketball tournament, right? 68 teams go, and there's 200 sitting at home watching, but that's part of sports. So I think it's been difficult to pass with the coaches that have been embedded in the NCAA for so long. They don't want to see change. Change is difficult. Change isn't always a straight line. Yeah. But at some point, if we want to survive, we have to make some changes.
Yeah, I totally agree about that, because when you look at the other sports like football, basketball, they have this kind of team. And I can really relate to that question where someone that asks you, did your team win? But yeah, it's very relatable. So it makes a lot of sense. And I agree with this kind of concept that it's going to help the college sports in the long run. And in the long run, it's going to drive more interest into track and field as well too. And yeah. And moving on, I want to talk about the NIL deal. I know it's something that I've come to stay in college sports. How coaches navigating it and helping recruit our talent into their programs. Can you share a little bit light on that?
Yeah, look, it's a very it's a fluid space right now. NIL from day one to now has changed so much, and I think it will continue to change, right? And initially when it started, it was like, well, if you can find some money out in the street, then you can give it to this athlete and bring them to the school. And so it was sort of the wild, wild west. Yeah. And it's becoming more regulated. And I think it obviously will give certain universities a step up in terms of recruiting. But it'll be very few, because again, your boosters are not, they don't want to give money to a school that doesn't necessarily win every weekend, right? So yeah, it's definitely an interesting space. I think it's a great from the athlete's perspective in terms of getting NILs from a shoe company or a sports drink and things like that. I do think that getting NILs from the university itself is a very gray area. And at the end of the day, I think for me personally, I don't mind what the rules are, so long as the rules are the same for everybody. I'm cool with it, right? So, we went to the final day at NCAA's, and they said it was going to be cold today, and I said, well, is it going to be cold in all 9 lanes or just in yours, right? So as long as it's an even playing field, I'm cool with it.
Yeah, that is awesome. Well, one of the questions that someone asked in the comments was that, what's your overall take on having an all division championship? If it's something it's good to have in the future. What's your overall take on that?
Yeah, look, I think it would be very cool to have that kind of a track meet. I think it's difficult in our sport because it requires more races and more competition, right?
Yeah.
One of the things I've always prided myself on is I feel like I don't over compete my athletes. We truly look at what you will be as a professional and feel like, maybe 28 or 30 races in a season is enough. So I think that puts quite a burden on your young people. But yeah, it would be fun to watch. That's for sure. It'd be kind of cool. We need to do a virtual one first, so we know how.
Yeah, that's true. Moving on from that, Coach, how would you say what makes an athlete successful aside the coaching and all that? What makes an athlete successful?
Well, I think like anybody in this world, what makes you successful is the people you surround yourself with, right? It's very easy to row a boat from one island to the other if everybody's rowing in the straight line and they're all rowing together. So the first thing, and I tell people this when I recruit them, figuring out where you want to go to college is not about the place. It's not about the facilities. It's not about anything except for the people that are involved in your day-to-day life. So, finding the right people to be around every day. On every team in America, there's some athletes that like to party. There's some athletes that like to eat, bad food. There's athletes that like to take shortcuts and not complete the rep. You have a decision which athlete you're going to train with and which athlete you're going to hang out with and which athlete you're going to go to class with. So for me, it's truly about the people you surround yourself with. And I think that's why Auburn has become a destination, right? 3 years ago when we arrived, we had a great group of throwers, and that was pretty much it. And now we've become a place that people want to be, they want to move to and want to be part of. And that's about the people. It's about the strength coach. It's about the trainer. It's about the athletes on the team already. It's about the academic advisor. It's about those people. It's about your coaching staff and how well they all mesh together and work with the athletes. So yeah, for me, I think you have to find the right people to be around. And then obviously you have to be self-motivated, right? No one wants to get out of bed at 5 a.m. and lift weights. Nobody wants to do stadium stairs on Tuesday or repeat 300s on Thursday. So those things are there. And I think you go back to the question you asked about recruiting people. And I think that's when you bring the right people together and they're willing to push each other day after day, then you get the great results.
No, that is awesome. So from what you said, I can really tell that you getting the right group of athletes to the program that they are going to channel like the positive energy and good work ethics to the program is some of the things that you look out for. Now
Sorry, one quick thing I didn't mention. Like for me, just because you're the best athlete or have the fastest time doesn't mean you fit what we're trying to do. And you can go back through my career and I've passed on very good athletes because I didn't feel like they fit our group. Then when you go through the next 4 years, sometimes, okay, that athlete runs really fast and you're like, man, I wish I'd had them. But you also know that it wouldn't have worked within the group. So I think you have to be willing to check your ego sometimes.
That is very true. That is very true. Let's talk a little bit of Charamba. Ever since you started working with him, what are some of the major improvements that you've seen from him personally?
Yeah, I think most of his improvements being up here, right? It's above the shoulders. I mean, obviously, yes, he's run faster, and I think, he's trained with a better group. Coach Kieran Shallow Davis at Carson Newman did an amazing job with him. Just, I mean, like hands down, fantastic job. And he set a base for us and he did great things. But when Maka got here and moved up a level, not just in terms of going from D2 to D1, but also the people around him, right? The day-to-day training, you walk in, you got to train next to Favor. You walk in, you got to train next to Dario, those kinds of things. And so I think from the shoulders up, he's made great strides in terms of his self-confidence, his awareness, his preparation for competition, the way he has changed his diet, his willingness to go in the weight room and lift things that he didn't think he could lift before, right? Workouts where, he's like, well, coach, I'm like, what's your favorite workout? Well, I like to do a 250. Okay, well, what's the fastest 250 you've done in practice? Well, we went 21 flat. The week before NCAA, he went 20-20 in a 250, right? So his mindset has changed, and I think he has truly opened his horizons to greater things. So it's been a lot of fun to watch.
No, that is awesome. And what about Ajayi, Ezra, those Nigerian guys? What are some of the main or key improvement that they've made ever since they joined the program?
Yeah, Ajayi is fantastic, right? Super focused young man, truly wants to do this at the highest level, whether it's on the track, in the classroom, as a person. And he's dedicated and he's willing to do all the little things, right? He's always the first guy at the track, the last guy to leave. He's doing core in the corner, right? And you'll see some guys go over and join him. So he's what I call the quiet leader, right? He does everything by example. Israel, I mean, he's 18 years old. He got here, he was still 17, right? He's a young guy. So he's learning from Ajayi, and Ajayi is definitely his role model. They spend all the time together. So Israel's biggest learning curve the last 12 months has been consistency in practice, right? He was very talented in high school. In Nigeria, he was the fast guy and he ran fast, he beat everybody, but he didn't have to train at this level. And I think what you're seeing is if you look at his season, he's run 10:07 3 or 4 times, right? Which is his PR. So we know something big is coming because he's very consistent. And I think that's a product of him becoming more consistent in his day-to-day preparation, his day-to-day training. So they've both done an amazing job and a long way from home.
Yes, that is very awesome to hear. We know NCAA season have ended. Now it's getting to like the second half of the season for championships and World Athletics Championship. What is the plan for the next year and the plan for these guys for the rest of the season?
Yeah, so we actually Thursday, we'll take the whole group to Europe. So we're going to have 3 meets there. And, they may not be the same 3 meets for everybody in the group, but we'll go over the 3 meets. We have an opportunity to sort of see what the professional circuit is like and run against some people that you didn't see in college and things like that. And then obviously Israel and Ajayi will go to their trials. Jacoby and Annalise will come back here. We'll go to the U.S. trials. And then Dario and Maka and some of the other guys will go into a training phase. So we got a busy summer. We obviously come back off the trials and we start school a couple of weeks later. And that gives us an opportunity to put a training block in and then hopefully go to Japan for about a week or 10 days training block or training camp in Japan and get ready for Worlds.
That is awesome. Coach, before I let you go, I want to get your perspective on the trending topic, Athlete Switching Alliance. Well, what from your perspective or your opinion, what would you say is the implication that is going to have on Africa athletics in the long run?
I actually think it's a good thing, right? I think it's going to force federations to step up and take care of their athletes. I ran for Zimbabwe my whole career. I went to 2 Olympic Games and 3 World Championships, and I made 2 finals at Worlds, and I think I did pretty great things. They never spent any money on me to prepare me to go to college or in college or anything like that. And the day that my Achilles went pop, I never heard from them again. Okay. So, and I think there has to be some sort of retirement package, some sort of, we love the fact that you wear our jersey and you represent our country, and we're going to continue to take care of you, or we're going to do that in the moment while you're an athlete. And if they don't, then I think we're going to see more defections, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I think it can only be a positive that it's going to force those federations to do a better job, and B, there's more money in our sport, and that can never be a bad thing.
That is awesome. Coach, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know you are a busy person. You handle a lot of athletes, elite athletes. So I really appreciate your time and for being on here today and share all these awesome ideas and all your awesome things you're doing out there. Thank you for sharing that with me, and thank you for being on the Showcast today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. And truly, I will tell you that everything that I am is only because of my athletes and the people around me. So my wife, my children, my parents. So everybody else, they're what allowed me to be who I am.